When building a structure, the majority of said structure is usually going to be made of one material: brick, concrete, steel, or the one that I'm going to use in this example, wood. When you build a wooden structure, especially by yourself in your backyard, it's mainly wood. But there is at least one other key material, because all that wood won't maintain its structure without usually something like screws holding it together in the right places. Those screws are such a small portion of the overall weight of the project, and yet without them, anyone who's ever built something would know that it'd just be a waste of time. Throughout my research, that's how I've come to think of today's nutrient. Really, this sentiment can apply to all micronutrients, but especially this one because it is the least concentrated mineral in the body. But just like these screws in a wooden structure, without it, you never know when a strong gust of wind is going to come blow you over. A big part of fitness and nutrition is being able to stand up to that wind, so without further ado, let's get back into the true nutrients. Manganese is an essential nutrient, meaning that the body cannot make it on its own and thus it must be consumed. Manganese is a mineral, which is an inorganic compound that originates in soil and water and works its way up the food chain until we find it in the foods that we eat. It was discovered in 1774 by Swedish chemist Carl Scheele and was isolated a year later by Johann Gahn. However, it wasn't until the 1950s that we knew that manganese was important for human health. As I said earlier, manganese is a trace mineral, one of the least concentrated essential nutrients in the entire body, with an average person only containing about 10 to 20 milligrams of manganese throughout the whole body. About 25 to 40% of it is in the bones, with significant amounts of it also being found in the liver, pancreas, kidneys, and brain. Manganese is typically only absorbed at a 1 to 5% rate, easily the lowest of any nutrient we've covered thus far, but the body doesn't tend to lose very much when compared to other minerals, so deficiencies are not very common. Because of this, manganese is not required to be on a standard food label unless it has been added to the product. But manganese still has several important roles in building your body the way it's supposed to be, so let's take a minute to talk about those functions. Much like those screws in your wooden structure, what little manganese there is in your body mainly functions in making and holding together a few key bodily components. It does this mainly by being a cofactor, a helper molecule that catalyzes chemical reactions performed by special proteins called enzymes. The most prominent enzymes that manganese is used for all mainly have to do with building. The first function manganese is directly tied to is bone formation. It is a cofactor for enzymes that regulate calcium homeostasis, calcium being arguably the most critical component of bones. Manganese ensures that the body has the right amount of calcium and that it's in the right place doing the right thing. Because of this, manganese deficiency has long been associated with impaired bone health. In a similar way, manganese is a cofactor for enzymes that produce and repair collagen, a protein crucial for the structural integrity of many things like skin and connective tissues, including tendons and ligaments. Manganese also has its own antioxidant contributions, preventing joint damage. And beyond that, manganese is needed to activate and release sex hormones like testosterone, estradiol, luteinizing hormone, and follicle-stimulating hormone. Manganese does have a few functions beyond just construction assistant though, the most prominent of these being its benefits in metabolism. Manganese is needed for proper carbohydrate and lipid metabolism, digestion and utilization of amino acids, and correct use of certain micronutrients like vitamin C, vitamin E, and choline. Beyond all this, manganese has a few other notable benefits, namely blood sugar regulation, improved thyroid health, insulin signaling, wound healing, combating of PMS symptoms, brain function, and its use in the creation of antioxidants and blood clotting factors. Not the flashiest nutrient in the world, more of a team player like many others, but it does get a lot done considering how little of it you actually need to consume. The recommended daily intake for manganese is among the lowest for all micronutrients. It is a mere 2.3 milligrams for men and 1.8 milligrams for women, though it does rise a bit to 2 milligrams for pregnant women and 2.6 milligrams for breastfeeding women. Conveniently, the estimated daily intake of manganese, at least here in the States, hovers right around there for the average person. Thus, a manganese deficiency is actually pretty rare, though of course not unheard of. It's sometimes caused by not having enough manganese manganese in the diet, but is often on top of some other underlying risk factor like diabetes, osteoporosis, epilepsy, and poor digestion. Symptoms of manganese deficiency include poor bone health, low sex hormone levels, impaired growth, abnormal metabolism, poor skin health, joint pain, improper tolerance of glucose, and low fertility rate. But fortunately, like I said, manganese deficiency is pretty uncommon due to manganese being found in many accessible foods. And manganese overconsumption and toxicity is exceptionally rare too. The daily upper limit for manganese is 11 milligrams, which is very difficult to exceed. It usually occurs due to oversupplementation or too much manganese in the water or in certain hazardous environments. If you have any concerns regarding any of this, manganese levels are best diagnosed by a blood test, which should realistically be done before any major changes to your diet. And lastly, let's talk about reliable sources of manganese. First up, plant sources. Manganese is in general much more commonly dense in plant foods than it is in animal foods. As per usual, the most nutrient dense per gram are nuts and seeds, with a few of them being so manganese rich, one serving is enough to fill your daily recommended requirement. But manganese is also found in significant amounts in grains like oats, amaranth, and quinoa, fruits like pineapple, grapes, and blackberries, vegetables like spinach, kale, and other greens like collards, as well as many beans and soy. Realistically, most accessible plant foods will solidly contribute to your manganese intake. On the other end, animal foods are not quite so easy. Some of the most reliable sources come from the sea, with mussels blowing all of the other competition out of the water. Some fairly distant but still great follow-ups include oysters, freshwater bass, and clams. Organ meats and pork products also tend to have solid manganese contents. Past that, the rest of the best are displayed, with other common meat and seafood options usually containing less than 0.2 milligrams per 100 grams. While this may look a bit dire at first glance, it's important to remember that manganese is much more bioavailable from animal sources, so it usually all evens out. Manganese supplementation is available, but is usually not necessary outside of certain higher risk groups. As with many important things in life, the little stuff matters. Any kind of long-term project or investment is going to build on itself, with certain parts making other parts more stable and efficient. Maybe you can get by without certain improvements and certain catalysts, but why would you want to when they make everything go by so much smoother? The same sentiment applies in many ways in the realm of fitness and nutrition. Your body is a structure that allows you to pursue everything else. Take every advantage you can get when it comes to fortifying it. Now, if you enjoyed the video, or at the very least learned a little something, I encourage you to subscribe as I have plenty more of these on the way. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments what other nutrients you think deserve an entire in-depth breakdown video like this. And remember that all I ask is that you do your own research and advocate for your body. You only get the one.